Senzo Mchunu has taken the driver's seat as Public Service and Administration Minister. He comes at a time as unions and government are at loggerheads over plans to trim jobs in the public sector and cut the wage bill. The public sector wage bill currently stands at over 500 billion rand. To discuss plans for his department, Minister Senzo Mchunu joins me. Good evening, Minister. Thanks very much for your time. Well, the President did say that one, they are going to encourage public servants, certain public servants, to take voluntary severance packages. How is that progressing?
Well, good evening to you and the listeners. It's an open invitation to public service workers, open to them until September this year. We will then make an assessment in terms of who has done what. But it's a choice that is open to members.
But any idea how it's progressing now, whether people are indeed responding to the call and it's the right people?
Well, I can only say for now that they are not enthusiastic. They are not enthusiastic about it. They are putting this on that question. One of the questions is why are we not doing it as the executive? But we stay positive about it as a choice that we've put to them, and of course going with other questions and so on. But from my interaction with some of them, it's not something that they're very enthusiastic about, but they accept that we've put a choice on the table.
Well, what is your response as the executive to that question that many people ask? That why don't you start with yourself?
Well, the one element of this idea was to revamp civil service by saying that, for instance, if you are over and above 55 years, you can make this choice. It would enable government to do two things. On one hand, government would choose to assess that position previously held by somebody who has just retired, whether it is actually still required, and a younger person would join, and in that way you have revamped civil service, or you fizzled out altogether because in terms of your assessment, it's not something that you should hire another person.
Now, I mean, if, as you say, people aren't as enthusiastic, you are going to be forced to actually do it yourselves. And listening to the unions, they are not going to put up with that. Then what?
We've said to them, look, this is a choice put to you by government. It's not forcing anyone. We will continue talking about it. They will continue responding and assessing and thinking about it, at the same time allowing their individual members to make individual choices and decisions on the matter. But you are aware that government at the national level is being reconfigured. Now, reconfiguring in some instances means that you are putting 2 or 3 departments in the previous administration that were like that, and now you are making them one department. Now, that means that you are going to have to rationalize workers in that particular situation. Those are some of the things that the government is doing just to make sure that when everything has been said and done, we have exactly the number of people in the public service that are required to render effective services to the people. So, in other words, going with that is the whole question of making sure there are people, public servants, who are at home for one reason or the other, who should be at work. Extended disciplinary cases, And in some cases, just neglect of such cases. People who were last seen as not well, but haven't been checked and so on. So there are a number of ways and a number of follow-ups that we are going to be doing very soon to make sure that anyone who draws a salary from the public purse earns it. But over and above that, that they don't just earn it by being present at work, that they do work as expected. But at the end of the day, all of us must make sure that we deliver the kind of quality service that we have said we will, and that is in accordance with the expectations of the people.
Well, your predecessor kept on talking about an exercise that your department was involved in. Do you now know exactly how many public servants and where you need as a state? But also, have you been able to say this is how much we're going to be able to pay them and no more? In other words, this is what we can afford as a state.
Those figures are not yet clearly there. They are different figures because it differs all the time. You can find that in a particular department there's this number of people, but at the same time something has happened and it has not been recorded. We are getting to that particular exercise and with a view to finalizing all those figures and make sure that when it come out to the public, we are able to say for sure, these are the numbers and this is what they are doing and this is where they are located.
Now, has there been deadlines? What have been the conversations between you and the president and the rest of the cabinet? Do you have timelines that by such and such a time this exercise should be completed?
We have put a timeline of end of the year this year on reconfiguration and all other related matters. Now, this suggests that by that time we should have placed everybody where they are required, after making assessments and finalizing the whole of reconfiguration, including placements for those workers that may not necessarily be absorbed in the reconfigured departments and making sure that all those discussions take place and they come to an end. Of course, it's not going to be an easy thing, but we've said to ourselves and we have said to the people that we are leading in departments, whether it is difficult or not difficult is a different question. President has said, let's move on this, but let's end it in December. This week, I'm hoping to have a meeting with the Director General in the Office of the President and the President so that we together make sure that the framework that we are creating and are following does work and it does happen within the timeframes that we have set for ourselves.
Okay. That's what we're going to leave it for this evening. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Minister Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Public Service and Administration.